Hello, and thanks for watching our show. I'm Harry Greenberger. I'm the president of the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association and the host for this program. Today we have as our guest Mr. Mwalimu Johnson, who is with, or he may be the, Capital Post-Conviction Project of Louisiana. And Mwalimu and I have known each other for many years as a result of our attending the monthly Gillespie breakfast group at the First Unitarian Church. So we have known each other and talked to each other, but never have we gotten into the depth of his program. I will say this, that whenever the opportunity arose, Mwalimu always spoke kindly about secular humanism, and for that we thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So what I'm going to do as a start, Mwalimu, is just ask you to give our viewers some idea of what you have been dedicating most of your life to.
Well, to do this, I would have to first say that I have to speak from a not-so-enviable position because I am a former convict, and my life now is dedicated more or less to helping to cure some of the social cancers, and this is something that I developed as a result of having been exposed to prison environments and having conflicts with the law. But my philosophy is that when one knows better, one must show better. So now that I know better, I have to show better. But my main focus right now is to help deal with some of the injustices perpetrated behind the facade of law, order, and justice. Because the prison system, while it is a necessary function in a civil society, is not what it seems to be to the general public.
And when you say some of the injustices, I assume that you are aware of many injustices, and there are some particular ones that are of your concern.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, well, tell us about that.
Okay, well, I can speak first of all from a few of my personal experiences, and then I would have to go over to another situation affecting some current prisoners and one who's involved in a situation related to some of the prisoners, but now has been released. And in 1972, while I was doing time in a federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas, I was sent from the maximum security prison to a medical facility at Springfield, Missouri. The reason being that there was a doctor named Dr. Skine, a military psychologist or psychiatrist, who maintained that there is a lobe at the base of the human brain which is responsible for criminal behavior. And when a prisoner's behavior could not be corrected by conventional rehabilitative processes, then in the best interest of society, this individual had to be subjected to a lobotomy to remove that lobe at the base of the brain, which Dr. Skine claims is the seat of criminal behavior.
And he says they can surgically remove the criminality.
Oh, yes. And, of course, I know it's not so as far as the fact of it goes, because I've seen people who have been subjected to this lobotomy, and the idea is to reduce an individual to a vegetable. And I won't pretend that I've been a candidate for sainthood at any point in my life. But at the same time, I feel that prison should be more or less for correctional purposes to separate an individual from mainstream society when that individual has displayed a lack of regard for others, the best interests of others, or the well-being of others, taken unfair advantage of others. But at the same time, this presupposes duly authorized personnel to maintain these facilities. But the personnel maintaining the facilities are cancerous themselves. And as I stated at the Gillespie breakfast, one doesn't cure cancer by introducing more cancer.
And you feel that that's a situation that prevails in prisons around the country as well as Louisiana?
I can speak for my direct exposure to Louisiana prisons and a few of the federal prisons, because when one is in federal custody, the individual may be transferred from one state to another for whatever reason, sometimes for no justifiable reason other than just to say this is a security problem. But in any event, I'm not trying to say that all of the prisoners are good guys, all of the personnel are bad guys, because my experiences have been that there have been positive and negative elements in every aspect of society. And I don't profess to know everything about anything, but at the same time, I do know that the prison system should be cleaned up, and it's more or less a sophisticated form of slavery.
Well, that's very disturbing. But you have some particular when we're talking about the post-conviction project in Louisiana. What is that?
Our office, the Capital Post-Conviction Project of Louisiana, was established in the 2000. Well, 2001, our doors opened, but in 2000 it was agreed by lawyers in the state of Louisiana, and it's supervised by the Louisiana Supreme Court that there was not sufficient representation for individuals convicted of death penalty offenses in the state of Louisiana. After these individuals who have been convicted of capital, which means a death penalty case, the individual has an automatic right to appeal to the Louisiana Supreme Court and exhaust that all the way up through the United States Supreme Court. And our office then has to come in from ground level, presuming, of course, that the individual didn't have his or her own attorney, and get all the necessary documentation, witnesses, whatever necessary to determine whether or not the individual has enjoyed the benefits of constitutional protection, but not just the letter of the law, but the substance of the law, because many times people go through motions and say, well, according to the law, but they neglect to say the substance of the law. There has to be a degree of fairness. And again, there are many mitigating factors in some people's situations, because while an individual may have in fact performed a certain illegal act, who's to say that that individual did this with a malicious intent? Because there are many people who sometimes as a matter of heredity and sometimes because of exposure to whatever life circumstances have been damaged psychologically. And it doesn't mean that one should be spanked on the hand or just sent on his or her way if there's a mental problem, but there has to be some line drawn to determine when an individual needs treatment. And for the most part, many of the people on death row do in fact need psychological treatment.
And when you say that they may be psychologically damaged, would that imply that they were no longer able to distinguish right from wrong?
In a general sense, one may know that, well, this is not the proper thing to do, but how many people with various types of mental problems could make that type of determination? And it doesn't excuse the behavior at all. I wouldn't suggest that at all, Harry. But what I'm suggesting is that when they are mitigating factors to clearly establish, for instance, the person's IQ level often reflects that there is a serious problem that may be hereditary, it may not be hereditary. But the fact that it exists means that this individual committed an illegal act. But is society growing and developing according to energy shows that we're going to get retribution. We have revenge as opposed to corrections. Even in Louisiana, public safety and corrections.
Yes.
But more appropriately, when one sees what's happening with the prison system as a whole, it's a form of economic exploitation. It should be the Louisiana Department of Corruption. And this I know based upon things that I personally observe and experience.
Well, that's a pretty strong statement.
Oh, it is. It is.
And you have some instances or examples of serious corruption that exists in the Louisiana system.
Okay, now let's take a look at one of the practices in Louisiana. I've done a considerable number of years in the Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, and it's common practice. What it was common practice, I say, because now with so much attention focused over the years, people are somewhat reluctant to do some of the things that they did so blatantly years ago. But there was a common practice of taking state cattle. They'll bring in these big flatbed trucks or whatever they use to carry out cattle, bring in scrawny cattle, take out the fat cattle, and go wherever they. And this has been investigated and proven to be fact and taken away. And when you consider, too, that Angola is 18,000 acres, bigger than many little towns through which I've driven, and soybeans play a great role in today's economy, and thousands of acres are dedicated to growing soybeans. The same with cotton.